towards the end of the presentation, but I wanted to provide a brief overview of what we're going to be discussing today. The first real piece of business on the agenda today, after I provide some introductory comments about what some of our goals are, we'll be looking at some of the recent GradMed enhancements, and Mike Russo will be leading us through that conversation. We're also going to be showing you a tool that we've been using behind the scenes that has not been made public yet, but it will be made public soon, which is Tableau. Tableau is a data visualization tool, and what it does is it allows you to have visualizations of your data, and that's a service that we're going to be providing in our office, and we're going to show a little bit of a demo of that. It's in its early infancy stages, but I think there's some pretty neat things that we can do to look at analytics of how our applicants and our enrollments in our markets. We'll be talking about that. I also am going to be having my communications and recruitment coordinator, Holly Aceto, be giving us a communications update in that area. And then I'm going to be spending some time at the end. Hopefully not everybody will be asleep by this time, because I'm currently co-leading a national research project with the National Association. It used to be called the National Association for Graduate Admissions Professionals. It's now called NAGAP, the Leader in Graduate Enrollment Management. And we are currently working on a project called the Defining GEM Initiative. And this is to increase the visibility and needs of graduate education on university and college campuses. We've been working with college colleagues from across the country on this, and I wanted to provide an update to you on that. And then at the very end, what I'd like to do is have an open forum for feedback, because really the best people that can be able to help us here are you. You're the people that are in day-to-day being able to answer questions because of the information that you're brought to you. Looks like we lost power here. Okay, Mike? Looks like the slide went blank, she said. Okay. Can everyone hear me okay? Yep. Thanks again for coming. My name is Mike Russo. I'm the Associate Director for Graduate Enrollment Management Systems, depending on who you ask. I essentially work on the IT side of what we do in GEMS. A lot of us contribute to that. Can we get a whoopee back here? Like a Hendrix concert. Hold on. How do we can you do that? Okay. I'll just keep going. Can everyone hear me okay now? I feel so at ease on the stage. But I see a lot of new faces here, and what I want to do before I start is to just ask the general question, how familiar the group is here with GradMed, because I don't want to go into a lot of background on the product, but there could be some people here who really don't understand what we have in GradMed. So just by a show of hands, how many people here have seen GradMed and understand it or use it regularly? Okay, that's good. Okay, so I don't really need to go into detail on the product itself, but what I will say, there are some things that you may not know about what we have in GradMed. I just want to take 1 second and point something out. The fact that we have our own admission system here at UB really makes us unique. And not only because we can change wherever we want, whenever we want to, but because it completely integrates with our back end here at UB. We have information going into Hub every night, information coming out of InfoSource, and that would be really hard to do with the commercial application. And I've recently surveyed the commercial applications out there that do what GradMed does, and there isn't anything literally in the world that does what GradMed can do.
and that is service over 250 degree programs with complete customization. Chris, that was your clicker. So we're excited about what's coming in the future, and I'm just going to bring up a page here now. Open this. Okay. And so we're excited about where the direction we're going to be moving in the future and what we've been able to accomplish over the last year. There have been hundreds of changes to the system since I was hired a year and a half ago, and I'm only going to talk about 3 of them today, mainly because these are the most comprehensive, largest changes, but they mean the most in terms of where the future of the product is going. And after I'm done sort of doing a quick review of these 3 parts of GradMet, I'd like to talk about where we're going and maybe open up the floor to see what kinds of things you might be interested in adding to the system in the future. But for now, we're going to talk about the first 3, and what I'm going to do, I don't have a lot of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to briefly go through in the interface how we've implemented each of these 3 things, talk about them, and then give a little time for feedback, because what we've done is we've put all these changes online, and we've sort of said, here they are, but we never really asked for feedback on what you liked and what you didn't like. So I'm planning in my head to go about 10 minutes of demo, and then hopefully 5 minutes or so of just quick question and answer, rather than to wait to the end where everything's out of context. I'd rather just stop as I go, and if that's okay with everybody else, we'll get started. So the first thing we'll talk about are the paperless self-managed applications, and some things you might not know about that. I'm just going to go into GradMet here. Some things you may not know about the paperless process, and just to explain what that is. Does anybody not know what I mean by that? Let's start with that. Okay. So we're collecting documents online now that we used to have mailed to us. And when we first implemented this change, we really didn't have any idea how many documents we were going to get, how many pages. But now we have numbers. And we know that since this has been implemented, we've captured over 500,000 pages in our system. These are pages that would have had, in previous years, been printed out. Somebody would have folded, put in an envelope, mailed to us. We would have opened up, gone into the system, marked that it was received in GradMet or some other external system. And then, if the applicant was an international applicant, we would have printed them out again and created a portfolio and sent that off to international admissions. So with that change, that's 500,000 pages that nobody had to handle, that they were immediately available. They were immediately available with the application when the application was submitted for the most part. In most cases, that was the case. We also have letters of recommendation that some we're doing online or not, but that's been completely revised as well. So that ties into the document thing. But what I'll do is I'll just go into the application list, and I'm going to show you something that you may not be fully utilizing all of the features that are associated with the paperless process and the documents. But one really cool thing I'll show you now is your ability to hide the screen. No, your ability to view all the documents at once. So if you can imagine that a single application might have 10 documents associated with it, letters of recommendation, official test scores, personal statements, resumes, whatever your requirements are for the application. This new feature, and I have a column here at the end that's called Print Docs. Now that's an optional column that if you don't see it on your screen now, it's because you have to go into your settings, which I'll show you now. You can just click the settings button, and then you have all the columns that are available for view on that screen. It's in this list. So it's this print all documents. It's right here. So if you turn that on, then you'll get that column. And I'm just going to jump back here. and then this page comes up. So this page shows me all the documents associated with this application. I can print out all of them, none of them, I'm sorry, all of them, one of them, or a couple. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to print all of them. And what it's doing behind the scenes is it's taking all of those PDFs, because every document we receive is converted to PDF. I thought I was wireless. Oh, I'm probably if I put this in my pocket. So this document comes up, and it's everything associated with the application in one document. And international admissions can do this too. I think the one you guys get is a little more advanced. But how many did not know that feature was there? Ah, all right, 3 people. So that was good. Everyone understands how the documents are tied to checklist items, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess, let me see what else I wanted to talk about with that before I open it up for some questions. Yeah, if I didn't make it obvious already, collecting documents electronically has allowed us to expedite processing of international admissions, but it's also allowed us to do application reviews online, which is something we could never do before. And I'll show you some of those features. I imagine there aren't a lot of people here who are utilizing that yet. I think we're doing a training next week on that that we can talk about later if anyone's interested. And that's for the application review portal. If anyone's interested in using it, you're not really sure how to get started, we are going to be having a training next week. And you could talk to Troy about that. Where are you, Troy? Anybody can come to that, right? Can anybody come to that? Okay, yeah. Okay. So, any questions about electronic documents at all before we move on to the application review portal? Anybody? Okay. So for the application review interface, if you're not familiar with it, I'm going to show you some of the setup options. So the idea is this. For application review, you can decide what application sections can be scored or rated or commented on. You decide who your recommenders are. This is the setup screen. I just went under setup and then app reviews setup. You decide what terms and years you want to review for. You decide which, I just mentioned the sections. You do that here. So you essentially determine what is important to you regarding applications. You can decide what's the statuses that would enable somebody to be reviewed. Just a lot of options. That, again, if you come to the training, we'll go through all of them. And the idea is that once you set this up, so you've decided that you identified your cohort of applicants that are allowed to be reviewed, and you have your recommenders. Well, the recommenders then log in, and they don't get all of GradNet. They get just their recommendations. So when they log in, they see a screen that looks like this. Oh, sorry. They don't see that screen. They see a screen that looks like this. Okay. And they may, in this case, I'm more or less a manager, so I'm showing everybody's assignments. But if I just want to see my own, this is what it would look like. And again, you can set permissions as well. So you could say that somebody's only allowed to see their own, or they're allowed to see everybody's. So security is very granular with GradNet in general, but especially with this module. So you have, I'll just pick my test applicant here. And so this is the review form, and you can see the different sections. Some have been completed and some haven't, but I identified all of these on the previous screen, what I wanted to see here. And I could go into, let's say, the standardized tests. And that opens up and it shows you all the documents associated with that. In this case, I have 3 of them. There could be 10, there could be 2, there could be none in some cases. But I can, in that section, I can enter comments and I can enter a score, a rating, and then I can mark that I've reviewed it. I'm not sure that all of these sections would be enabled for a faculty review, but in this example, I think I turned them all on. And essentially, one interface, you can see everything about the application here, and then you can give an overall recommendation and save it. And I'm just going to return to the list. There are some things that, some updates that I'll probably be making to this next week, some interface changes that are just to keep it in line with the other enhancements that have been made. Does anybody have any questions about the recommenders portal? Yes?
Where did you get to that screen from?
I went under management and then application review.
Okay, and that's where you see the whole everything.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where you can see everything. And the question is, how did I get here? And to get to this list screen, you go to management and then recommendations, and then to get to an applicant, you would click here. But that's actually going to change soon, where you can just click anywhere in the row. That's one of the changes I'll be making. And then once you click there, it loads this screen, which is it's compact, but behind the scenes there's a lot of information being hidden in these little sort of accordion style, I don't know what you call them, nodes. Okay. Any other question about application review? Yes?
Is there a place where all faculty can comments on the application?
Like a consolidated report? Not yet. But if somebody can make a note of that, that is on the roadmap for that. And I can work on that, over the next couple of weeks. And just so everyone knows, the way development usually works with GradNet is we'll start work on one of these major components, and sort of we'll get it to a certain state, knowing that we have maybe 5 or 10 more things we're going to do to it eventually, but we want to get it. We at least want to get sort of the baseline functionality into production, so that people can start using it before we invest more time in it. It always works out better that way, rather than us assuming what features or what layouts work best. We prefer to just to get the product, or to get the product feature online, make it available, and let people start using it. And that was absolutely the case with this one. It was done in pretty much everything we've done this year was done in a compressed amount of time, but done in a way that would allow us to sort of do this iterative development. I think software in general is developed that way. But here at UB, in our group, I have to do things a little bit differently because I don't have a whole team of developers like I did in the old days. We had developers and testers and things, so all that gets done, it just gets done in a different way. So, but I think we'd have to agree that we've made good progress on GradNet this year, and a lot of what's good about the enhancements I'm talking about today are really good because of you. And we sat down in the room before we did letters of recommendation, before we did the reviewers portal, and just asked people what they wanted to see, what was most important to them, and hopefully, the finished product, or at least finished to this point, is serving the needs of most. But we know we have some ways to go, at least I do, with the recommenders portal, and it's going to be a lot better than it is. What you have now is just the initial version of it that allows you to do reviews, but maybe doesn't have all the bells and whistles we'd like to implement. Okay, any other, yes?
I have a question, but it's not about the LOR section. It's about, okay, when you've accepted someone into the program,
Yes?
and it used to be you put accept in the top part, and then as the person accepts it, there's another part down below that you would put accept and the date and all that. Well, what happened for me was you put accept up here and then decline down below, because you declined, he's still getting acceptance email, okay? So somebody went in from the Graven office, which was fine, and changed the accept to decline or whatever. But the problem is, I'm running my stats for enrollment off that top accept thing. So now that's all messed up. So I don't know how to get back to those.
All right, let me, just so everyone understands. So what's your name?
Cheryl.
What Cheryl's asking She's asking about this. When you go into a status page for an applicant, and you set their current status up here, which could be accept, there's a confirm down here. Is that what you're talking about, this confirmation? Or you're talking about the applicant declining?
Correct.
Okay. Well, there are two different things. You know, when we have an official, a current status of accept, and the applicant withdraws, it should change the value of the current status automatically. And you're saying it's not, or that there's a filter in the email that somebody might have changed. That is entirely possible. And so everyone understands, we have a communication engine, but it's available in the application manager too, but you may not have access to it. But you can set filters. So you can say, this message goes once to every applicant who's been accepted, and for this term, for this degree program, you can pretty much filter on every piece of information related to an applicant. And in some cases, you would want to say, I want to send this message to applicants who have been accepted, but subsequently declined the offer. Is that what you're asking about?
No, see, apparently there's these generic emails going out from the university saying, congratulations, you've been accepted, blah, blah, blah. And from what I understood, it was based on their current status. And unless I changed it to withdraw, they still get these emails. Well, the problem is, I use this for enrollment statistics, and if I change the current status and I do those charts later on, the reports, that messes that all up. So by doing, you know what I'm saying?
Sort of.
Let me respond to that one.
Okay.
I think what you're saying, Cheryl, is the accept decline then means it's not accepted anymore. That piece that's above it, it throws your data off when you're trying to look at only people who are AC, correct? Okay. What we do, as we do it in our weekly reports, we consider even people who are AD, they're considered accepted as well. So those individuals, they're considered an offer extended. They're not clearly coming anymore, but the confirmation is directly tied to that. And we can talk about how we can make that easier for you with your report. Okay?
All right, thank you.
Yep. Okay. Great. More questions? Yes.
Back to the reviewer portal, if a faculty member goes in and fills out all the reviews, can another faculty member see those comments?
It's up to you. You can actually set security to allow individuals to see others, or to say certain individuals can only see their own. So you can have some people who can see everything, and then, did everyone hear the question? Yes, everyone heard
I
the
was
question.
too slow.
Yeah. Yeah.
If one faculty member already fills out all of their comments, can another faculty member go in and view them, was my question. But when you say that I personally have the authority as,
Whoever sets this up, it's part of the configuration, and I can show you that option.
oh, I see.
Okay, so the first option here is reviewers may only view or access their own assignments. So if that's set, then and you have somebody who's a reviewer, and that box is checked, they won't be able to see anybody else's. In some cases you might want it, in some cases you might not. But it's flexible enough to do that. And as far as security goes, if there are other wrinkles that we haven't thought of, we can certainly implement those in the future, just to make sure that people aren't seeing something they're not supposed to be. Okay, there was one other question? Oh, yes. If you don't select that, it'll look exactly like it does for me. So when I go into the recommendation or the application review, I can see everyone else's reviews in there, and I can do a show all. So it'll look just like this, where I can see some of these reviews aren't mine, and if I wanted to go and look, I could. Like, well, these are actually mine. I've done all these, but it would look just like this. So. Any other questions about the application review before I talk about some of the letter of recommendation enhancements? Okay. I don't know how many of you were here for the letter of recommendation meeting that we had, but the online letter recommendation module was the oldest module in GradMit. It's the only one that really hadn't been rewritten in 10 years, 10, 12 years. So I completely gutted it and rewrote it from scratch so that it has a lot more functionality both for applicants, for users in the application manager, just the ability to remove a letter, the ability to resend an invitation to complete, and I'll show you some of that. But the biggest enhancement there was reinstating this assessment, the idea of an assessment form that complements a letter recommendation, where you can ask about specific applicant attributes and have them rated on a scale. And then there are a few other fields that recommenders can fill out, including an overall rating. So let's take a look at, if we're ready to move on. Is everyone okay? You ready to move on? So let's just look at the letter recommendation, the setup screen. So while I'm in the application manager now, and I've decided that I'm going to do my online letter recommendation. So the first thing recommender setup. So I'm going to look at this degree program. And this is the setup screen. So you have some recommendation form options. These are some things that you might want the recommenders, questions you want the recommender to answer about the applicant, like the length of time they've known them. Again, for years we didn't ask any of this. We just asked for the letter. So this is a big deal. And then you have the messages, the invitations sent, which allow you to put in merge tags. So for example, if you, it used to be that the only way you could tell who sent the letter was to look at the title of the message. And now you can actually embed it in the message in a nice way. There are several merge fields. You can put the recommender's name, their email address, a link to the site, the applicant's name, the first name, last name of the applicant. So there are quite a few ways you can customize the messages that go out. Now they look a lot more professional. The old ones they were just text-based and just really, really ugly. And I think that, as a university, we never really looked good. And I've been chomping at the bit since I was rehired here at UB to rewrite that module because I could see why people weren't using it. It just wasn't very functional and it wasn't pretty. But now it is. And so in this case, I'm going to log in as a recommender. And just to show you a little bit of, this is the setup for the attribute form. So these are all the applicant attributes that I can have rated. And rather than for you to try to imagine how that looks, I'm just going to preview the evaluation form. So as a recommender, when I log in for a given applicant, for this particular degree program, because of how I've configured it, I get this relationship with the applicant, these 3 questions, because I've enabled them. If I didn't want them, they wouldn't even appear on the form. And then I get a summary evaluation, which I've set, set the scale here. And then they can, of course, upload their letter of recommendation, just as they could before. This is all, it has pretty sophisticated validation. It checks, the file formats and things like that. Now, one thing I have noticed, and you probably have too, and this is a problem that will be addressed today and tomorrow, is we've had a really hard time with document conversion rates with letters of recommendation. And it took me a while to figure out why. The reason is this, because typically we're getting documents uploaded by students who do a much better job of making sure that their file formats are modern and the files aren't corrupt, whereas I don't think recommenders care as much. So there are a lot of files that we're having problems converting. I mean, and when I say a lot, the percentage still may be under 1%, but compared with applicants where I think we had like 4,000 failures over 300,000 conversions, which it's minuscule. And even when there are failures, it's typically because they use a version, some word processor that maybe nobody's used since 1992 or something. WordPerfect or something that we just can't convert to PDF. So what I'm considering doing, if anybody else is annoyed by that conversion pending message that you might see on the letters of recommendation page, is I may start requiring on this page that recommenders upload everything in PDF format. It'll make everything easier for you, and really, who doesn't know how to create a PDF by now? You know, it's essentially, it's part of the print function. So that's going to be coming soon, because I just don't have time to keep going in and manually converting documents. Yes?
Can you require that applicants do the same thing though? Because like that summary PDF doesn't come up if all of the documents the student uploaded aren't PDFs as well. I've noticed that. Like
Well-
if they upload something in Word, you don't get it in that PDF. And we can see in the individual, but it would be nice if it were all PDFs so it would come as one document.
Okay, yeah, the question was, can we require their students too? Now, if you upload a Word document, it should be converted to PDF behind the scenes. But if it can't be, then it keeps it in the original format because it doesn't know what else to do. It doesn't want to delete the document, but it tries, believe me, behind the scenes, if a document conversion fails, it tries 3 or 4 other ways to fix that document programmatically before it just gives up. But I think we may be heading down that road. I really didn't want to do that because there are other systems out there that require it. It's kind of a pain. But we have a really nice conversion engine, and you know, 9 out of 10, no, it's probably even higher than that. It's probably, you know, it may fail 1 out of 5,000 times on a particular document. But I think it, you know, we have to weigh that versus the convenience to the user to just use the format they have it in. You know, down the road, yeah. Oops, sorry. It would make my life a lot easier if everything was PDF on the way in. And with that said, I've seen a lot of cases where PDFs come up corrupt too. So it's definitely not the only solution, but it is one worth looking at. Okay, so another thing I'll talk about here, just getting back to this letter of recommendation, the management of letters of recommendation has been completely rewritten as well. So I don't know if you remember the old screen where you go to see your letters of recommendation, but this is completely redone. You can search by name, you can search for the recommenders, you can search for applicants by name, by email address. You have actions here, some of which were never allowed. So this is a scenario that there are certain scenarios here that we could just never manage. If they occurred in the past, someone would have to call me and I'd have to literally delete records from a table manually. But the ability to remove a letter is huge. And why would you want to do that? Well, we just had it happen earlier last week. Somebody uploaded the wrong letter, and once it's in our system, they can't get back in. A recommender can't go back in and delete it. So this would allow you to go in and remove a letter for whatever reason. You can also upload a letter for an applicant, and that's something, again, we could never do. It was such a closed system, and it was so different than everything else in GradNet, and you would have never known it by looking from a user perspective. But internally, that section was so old and everything was so archaic. Now it's been modernized. You can upload letters for the applicant. Everything is logged. It knows that the recommender didn't upload the letter, you did. So those are just a few of the enhancements. Before the end of tomorrow, applicants can actually send, I'm saying this, I know this change is going up tomorrow, but applicants can actually send reminder requests. They can see, okay, this of my 3 recommendations, 2 submitted, but this third one's really dragging his heels. The applicant can take the initiative and send the enhancement request. I'm sorry, and send the request, resend the letter of recommendation request themselves. And then internally here, you would see that on this list screen that that a request was just sent yesterday, for example, by the applicant. So you don't have to do it again because you may be as antsy as the applicant in that regard. Any questions? Any other questions about the letter of recommendation? Yes.
In regards to the last reminder sent, is it at all possible to see a log of how many times something has been sent?
Yes.
Just, if a faculty member wants to know how many times have you communicated that, just to have some sort of backup in terms of proof of that?
Absolutely. Yeah. This was designed with that in mind. As a matter of fact, behind the scenes, and it hasn't been implemented yet, but it is on the roadmap for this,
Okay.
is to be able to show a log. Everything that happens related to letters of recommendation now is logged. I mean, everything in detail. So we're doing that more and more with other parts of System 2. And I'm going to talk about some enhancements where that's going to come into play in a second. But absolutely, the information is behind the scenes. I mean, we're just showing the last one, but we really do know everything that happened, including when the initial recommendation was sent, the initial request, I mean.
Wonderful, and the interface is fantastic now, so thank you for that. Just one other thing, in terms of letters bouncing back, so if the applicant puts in an email address and the email doesn't make it for some reason or another, is there any sort of indicator that's made or enhanced or possible to let us and the staff know that the recommendation request didn't make it to that recommender, aside from the applicant knowing?
Yes. One of the things we do now, I mean, it's not been implemented yet, but it can be, and I'll tell you why. One of the things we did in our communication engine recently, well, two major enhancements, is the ability to track messages that have been read. So if we send out emails now, we know exactly when it was opened. And we know the IP address, we know everything about it. In a lot of cases for our emails, we know which links they clicked in the email. You know, so it's very impressive, you know, what we can capture now. So in the case of letters of recommendation, all we really need to do is when the letter goes out is to put our little tag inside the message, and we'll know it was received. And I think that's a great idea, because in some cases these messages could be sitting in someone's spam folder and they would never even know.
Sure. Yep.
In this case, you know, at least we can say the applicant, and here, you know, it was request last sent here, it was sent 10 times, we never opened. That's, you know, red flag right there that it's not getting to the person. The email address is wrong, or it's being blocked by some other means.
Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Great ideas. Hi.
If we do have letters that are stuck in like the pending conversion, should we just contact your office for that then, or?
By tomorrow, what's going to happen is this: for those documents that are stalled, because what happens, and I'll tell you why these documents stay there, because it tries different things to fix them. But in the case of if it's been over 2 days and it's still pending conversion, it's never going to convert. So by the end of the day tomorrow, those are all going to be gone. And if the system can't convert the message after a day or two, I think that after a day or two, we would have exhausted every possible way of converting that document to PDF. I'm just going to show it there, a link on this page to let you see it, but make a note that it hasn't been converted to PDF. It couldn't be. So at least it's visible and it's not confusing. Like, when is this ever going to convert? How can I see this with the rest of my documents? Unfortunately, if it's a doc, or you pick the file format and not PDF, and we can't convert it, we can't add it to the consolidated that interface where we can build consolidated documents. I think. All right. Any other? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Good. Yeah, it's really annoying to me, and it gets back to the issues we've had with conversion for a letter recommendation. All right. Are there any other questions about that? No? Great. I think we're almost right on schedule. I want to briefly talk.
I have one more question, and this may be pretty simple. When you send out a recommendation email, and it perhaps bounces back, is there any way for us to prevent that from happening, from bouncing back?
So you send out the message. You would click resend request, and because your email was the sender, you get a bounce back saying what?
Joanne, you had that issue.
Well, I get undelivered in my mailbox, and somebody said, well, if you click resend, sometimes it'll come up and you'll get the name of the applicant. But I think I figured the answer to that out. You said there's a setting in there where you can say you want the applicant's name to appear on that. Because what happens is I get this email address that could be linked to any one of my applicants, but I don't have a name to connect it to. So it's almost impossible. It's like a needle in a haystack looking for it.
Yeah, well, just to give you a tip, you can go to the applicant screen. I'll show you how you can do that now. You can go here and you can choose email and just paste the email in here and search and it'll find it.
But it's the email of the recipient, it's the recommender's email that's coming back and the system's saying this is undeliverable because maybe the applicant had the email incorrect and therefore got bounced back and it shows up in your inbox.
That's
But
good.
I think you explained it, I think there's a section.
Yeah, what you can do here is you can go to now what I did was I went to management and then recommendations. So if you want to find the recommender here, you can just say recommender email and type the recommender email in here and I'll just put it in ref. You don't even need the whole thing. I'll just say show me every email that has that string in it. I should have a ton of them. I'll go. And actually all of these do. So it found these the emails here. So that it doesn't solve the problem completely, but at least it'll give you a leg up on figuring out who it is.
Most definitely.
And to correct the email now, this is one other thing that we do in Larry's recommendation, which we've never done. You can go back to the application and where you fill in the recommender's name and email address, you can update that with the correct email address, click save, it'll automatically detect it's changed and resend the request for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I found that one out. That's great, thank you.
Yeah.
If an applicant wants to resend it,
Yes.
I'll call them and say, you know, I've got a couple of them, and they'll call me and I'll say, let's find out, resend it for you. How would an applicant do that themselves?
They have the application status page that shows all of the status of their requested materials, and Larry's recommendation now show in a different section. And that'll be online by the end of the day tomorrow. And what it's going to show is it's going to be similar to the list you see here. It's going to show, you know, when it was received and all the details. But if it hasn't been received, they're going to have the ability to see when it was last sent, and then eventually get the log that somebody requested here, and then send it themselves. And when they do that, and you log in here, you'll be able to see, oh, this recommender hasn't responded, but I can see the applicant has requested, you know, 6 times, you know, for them to log in and submit. Now, one thing that we'll do down the road is this, and I think everyone will be in agreement this is a good idea. If I created on my application 3 recommenders, and I have 2 have submitted, and 1 just is not going to do it for whatever reason, and the deadline's getting close, and I want to change it to somebody else, we're going to let the applicant change a recommender who hasn't submitted yet, and just let them do it themselves. It really, there's no reason why that has to enter into, you know, something that you would do in the admissions office. You know, it's their application. And it's not like they're changing something on their application like their GPA. This is, you know, their recommenders, and it's their job to make sure that you get 3 recommendations in the office for them. So that's on the roadmap for letters of recommendation enhancements.
Mike, I have one more question, if I may.
Oh, that's fine.
So if there is some sort of a firewall, something that prevents this request to getting through to the recommender, can the applicant be notified in some way that it failed to reach its destination?
Well,
Or let us know it failed to reach its destination?
well, the sender would get a bounce back message from the SMTP server, from the POP server, or whatever email server tried to receive it. The fail message always goes back to the sender. So in cases where you would be the sender, if you were sending something to the applicant, I think for letters of recommendation requests, the sender ends up being the department. So you would get the bounce back, but there would be no way for the applicant to know that it was bounced back. It would have to happen. It goes back to the sender.
So the bounce back happens when it hits a firewall or some sort of a filter that prevents it from being delivered? Is that?
There are usually 2 reasons. One is an invalid email address, and the other is that it could be, not that it thinks it's spam, it's actually worse than that. It would be that our server was blacklisted as sort of a mail server that sends out a lot of spam. And we're talking about UB's mail server. And all it takes is a couple students to do something stupid for that to happen. It's happened a lot over the last 15 years. And all we really have to do when it does happen is make some phone calls and get our server whitelisted again. But those are the two biggest reasons for bounce backs. With the 98% of the time, it's an invalid email address, which is something that has to be corrected manually. And I'd like it to be that the student could correct that. That's what I'm saying. I'd like them to be able to go in and be able to adjust these things, because once the application is submitted, I think there are certain fields that it's okay if the applicant changes. If the letter hasn't been submitted yet, then why not let them pick a different recommender if they want? Or change an email address. Why should we be doing that in the office, right?
Right.
Okay. All right, so let's, lost my, there. So what's coming down the road? We just talked about a year and a half of enhancements for GradNet, some of the bigger things, but what's coming down the road are user interface enhancements, and a lot of them. So the entire student interface is going to be redone to look more modern. And the application manager as well, just for more consistency, a better user interface. I don't know if I put it up here. Oh, yeah, dashboards. One thing we don't have in the application manager now that are needed desperately on the opening page are dashboards that are configurable. So you can see what messages are going out, how many applications were submitted on a given day. Just one screen that'll show you what's going on, things that you care about, and allow you to hide or show different channels. That's another thing we're going to be doing this year. And also, there are going to be a lot of infrastructure changes, so maybe not visible to you in all cases, but behind the scenes, we're trying to get the system ready to move into sort of a different paradigm of how we collect and manage information. In the past, it's always been applications and inquiries. It's never been about people. So you could have somebody who submitted 6 applications, but we don't have a table that just has one person record that points to 6 different applications for that person. What we have are 6 different records in our application table. And I'm looking back at it now, it seems like a silly design, but back when this was first designed, it was not a bad idea, especially considering that a system like this that was online, that did online admissions, didn't exist anywhere in the world when this was first created. So what we're moving towards now, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the prospecting and the CRM functionality, is this idea that one person comes into the system, and they may come in as an inquiry, and they may come into the system as a name that you purchased on a list, and they'll get emails, marketing type emails, whether it's sent from the departments or from the university, and then they might inquire, and then they might apply, and then they might enroll. Well, we want to capture all of that, and that's where we're moving now. So up at there are 3 major portals in GradNet. You have the application portal where the applicant goes. You have the application manager that everyone here is familiar with, and then there's a level on top of that, which is a very large level on top that it configures everything for the entire university. Well, we have a prospecting module there now, and we've been using it. Now it was implemented. It was implemented a week or so ago, and for the last I'd say 6 months or so, we've been sending out emails to these prospects, and their response has been unbelievable. I mean, I think we sent out 70,000 messages for names that we bought or we had in our database, and of those, Chris, was there over 1,000 applied?
That's correct.
Yeah, we had over 1,000. For doing almost nothing, just essentially getting these lists, putting them in, and clicking send, we had 1,000 new applications. So imagine, going forward, we're going to be focusing on sort of that paradigm where you have lists of people that maybe aren't just applications or aren't just inquiries or aren't just prospects, but the ability to track movement of people through the system, and just tools that allow you to do a lot of sort of return on investment reporting. And these things. Yes?
Yeah, Mike, I just wanted to ask, thank you. I just wanted to ask, it seems to me that we're ignoring one other possibility here, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, but we have a wonderful opportunity to gather information from applicants that could be useful down the line in terms of both development and alumni things. If we asked if they were interested, for example, in receiving information about theater, film, the arts on campus as part of their application process, if they were interested in self-identifying in terms of interest in Jewish material or gay and lesbian material, and it seems that we could really powerfully augment our development strategies because we would be able to subsequently in years in the future go back, find out who clicked on that information and send them recruitment information or money information.
Okay, well,
Actually, let me answer that too, Mike.
okay.
I think you hit the nail on the head of what I'm going to be talking about later with the whole, the evolution of student success and retention and how that directly relates in the student life cycle to recruitment and admissions. And that's one piece that I think for an onboarding process is not just onboarding, it actually is a recruitment tool and it's also a legacy retention tool in terms of that. So that is a piece that our research is showing, and certainly that piece of the onboarding process initially would definitely be very helpful, and your point is well taken. We are looking at, for this upcoming year, improving our onboarding process. Not everybody has 10 staff for the onboarding process. Some people have 5 faculty and 1 person working on admissions applications. Some have 10 staff doing orientations where students can have all of this. Not all have that. But I think there's an opportunity here to make visibility of what we have on campus to leverage it as a recruitment tool. So your point is very well taken.
Okay, well, I ran a little over. If there are no other questions, and I'll just throw it out there. Any other last minute questions? Good, good. Well, thanks everybody for your time. I look forward to continuing to improve. Thank you.
I want to echo how much work Mike Russo does for all of the departments, for the faculty and the staff. And again, what we do here, nothing is perfect, but I'll tell you right now, Mike is a brilliant guy, and we're extremely lucky to have him. There's a lot of exciting things that we can do, but the important thing is that we hear from you. If there's things that aren't working, we can't fix them unless we hear from you. Okay, so make sure you keep that line of communication open because we want to make your process easier and better for you. Okay. Kind of going back when I lost my power on my screen for a second there, one of the things I wanted to talk about earlier on before Mike had began was what are our goals for 2014? These are easy to talk about at a high level, but I wanted to kind of get a little bit into detail on 1 or 2 of them. But one of the main goals right now that we have established is we need to build our prospect and our applicant pools at the university at the graduate and professional level. There are some areas that need it a lot more than others. And even the areas that don't think that they need it, they need to diversify the type of applicants and the type of prospects that are out there that are encouraged to apply to the University of Buffalo and even enroll. So that's a really big priority for us right now. We're looking at tools and gimmicks and ways of doing this. Clearly the best way of doing this is the high touch. It's also the most expensive way of doing it. And I don't mean expensive in terms of a price list. You can go out and buy names, okay? But your return on investment may not be that great. Being able to look at what we can do in our departments and our faculty and staff to be able to leverage that relationship, because really in the end, the students want to hear about the academic enterprise, okay? National and global trends are not being very nice in certain areas. We are struggling in certain areas to be able to keep our heads above water. We have to figure out a way of getting out in front of this, and that's something I know that administration is very key on. I think some people may say, oh, no, they don't really care about grad education. We're going to talk about that later. I think the visibility is increasing. There's an acknowledgement that there's an issue here. We need, and we are working aggressively, all of us here, on improving our completion rates of our applicants. And that really has to be something that goes beyond just go back in and log in and complete your application. I'm going stealth. I've logged into different universities. I put a phony birthday on for my son. Don't tell anybody. But he's applied to some major public research institutions around the country. I'm getting the same stuff back from every school. Apply now, get back in here. They don't want to hear that. They get saturated with it. Although it's great procedurally, you want to hear about that information. You have to make sure that you're looking at the uniqueness factor, okay? What makes you unique? The academic program uniqueness factor has to be communicated. Students want to hear about that. They don't want to hear, oh, I have to go back in. Yeah, that happens. It's good to have a reminder once in a while. But if you're inundating with those types of messages, procedural messages only take you so far. You have to make sure you're showcasing. The students will come to you because of the faculty and the services that you provide them. Faculty play a critical role in this piece. And COGSRO, I was talking to a faculty member who's here, and one of the things I'd really like to do is I'd like to have more of the faculty participate in this process. Okay? Because if the faculty are not involved in the process, we're not able to bring in those students. They have to be a part of the conversation. It's also easy to be over in a corner and, oh, this doesn't work. We have to be a part of it. We have to listen. We have to be able to be engaged in that process. They also play a critical role in the onboarding and student ambassador process. Our GradMet CRM, we have some things that we can do. We're working with many of you on that piece to be able to help leverage that, but there's more of the individual academic departments that we could get information from. We can do it for you. We can send it up for you. It looks like it comes from you. You end up reaping the benefits of that because it looks like it's coming from you and it adds value-laden information from your individual department. We need to enhance our acceptance to enrollment yields. Many schools are doing this well, but there are some programs that have struggles because we don't all have the same staff sizes from program to program or school to school. We have to do things creatively to look at that, and I know we're very key on that. And faculty and students, current students, play a critical role in this process. The other thing, and finally I'll leave you with, which is pretty mundane and obvious to know, the distribution of early offers has proven to help. There were several schools this past cycle that really moved that back very early. I'm aware that there are some challenges that we're learning. Lee Melvin and I have been going around to meet with each of the deans, and we're learning some challenges that are out there regarding some scholarship programs. Those are key pieces. We're learning, we're going through that process. Scholarships right now are a piece that we have to be able to leverage appropriately, and if there are things that are not being done, we need to look into those. Some of the services that we provide, quite frankly, this is more of a 101 to remind. We are increasingly getting requests from individual departments to meet with us to talk about recruitment plan development. Even before any of that happens, in those meetings, the biggest piece you have to think about are what are your goals and objectives. That is not always very clearly defined, whether that comes down from top down, but it's very important to have those goals and objectives before we start talking about tactics. But my office offers that service to be able to look at recruitment plan development and different things, thinking innovatively. And a lot of times what happens in those conversations, whether with faculty or whether they're with staff, is synergies happen where people come up with ideas together that we might not have even thought of. The prospect pool and applicant pool building, if there are areas that are hurting, we're exploring looking at some lower cost options that we can help increase your prospect pool. We have that as a service. We're very data rich, okay? And my colleagues in my office, Troy Joseph and Alex Nelson, who will be talking about this in a minute, we have so much data, okay, in graduate admissions. As a matter of, and graduate enrollment, we have a ton of data, but what are we doing with that data? Data is useless unless you start to analyze the data. We're looking at moving in the direction of being able to help you analyze the data with some tools that are much easier to decipher than just looking at a spreadsheet. Spreadsheets can only tell you so much, and they are helpful to a certain audience, but then when you're looking strategically and planning, the tools that you can provide visually can help. Our communication plan development. Graduate, by its sheer nature, is a very ugly animal. You cannot make everybody happy. Okay? However, senior level administration wants grad. I'm sitting in a meeting, what's the grad numbers? Well, excuse me, grad's a little different. It's this, and this. We're not all the same. We all have different staff sizes. We all have different faculty sizes. We all have different budgets. The important thing here is coordination. Holly has joined us. We hired her over the summer to help with coordinating what our recruitment plans are, our communication plans are, in conjunction with yours. So we're not sending stuff out and stepping on your toes. We want to be able to work as a partner with you. Some of you are going to want our service less than others, but we need to get there, okay? And peer institution research. This is huge. This can be very helpful for departments who are maybe struggling and looking at things. We offer that service to be able to figure out what are the other universities and colleges doing. Through our affiliation with NAGAP, we have a lot of connections around the country. This can also be very helpful to be able to get the inside those schools to figure out what's going on, and that's a service that we provide to be able to look at that data and help you and make some logical interpretations off of that. And of course, GradNet. Mike is a tireless warrior for us to help us kind of go through that, but I think we have a real advantage here at the university. The system itself has been evolving. There's a lot of work left to be done, but I think it provides us a very unique tool that is UB-centric, and at the same time, it's flexible to the individual needs of the academic departments. Yep. I had a placeholder slide there for Mike when my little thing went out. So I'm now going to transition to talk about, with my colleagues here, visual data analytics and the use of the Tableau tool. And again, this is in its infancy. We're moving in this direction. There's some things we're starting to put up on the website, but it's going to give you an idea about some of the things that we're planning for the future.
Good afternoon. I apologize, I'm super congested. So, my name is Troy Joseph, and I work in the Office of Graduate Management Services, along with Alex. He'll introduce himself later. We are tasked with data reporting and now vision analytics and any ad hoc and strategic reporting that goes out to units. Most of you have seen our weekly reports that go out. They are definitely filled with tons of data. But what we're trying to do is establish a tool, Tableau, which you'll learn about later, that supplements those reports. Not everyone wants to see 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tabs of just numbers and words. Sometimes it's just a little bit easier to look at a visual and immediately see what is going on or to track what you're doing. So just to introduce what we're saying again, we are definitely moving towards looking at strategic data reporting to supplement you not only in tracking where you are during a cycle, but to assist you in providing information to whether you're looking for additional funding, whether you're looking for additional staffing. Data, as Chris said, is all over, but if you have the numbers to support requests,